Hi guys, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing another Radar Reads video, and this is sort of my looser version of a TBR video where I share all of the books that are currently on my radar. And this could be anything from the books that I actively plan to pick up sometime soon, to books that I have just heard other people talking about or that have caught my eye recently and that I'm thinking about possibly picking up or putting on hold at the library. The first of which is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is a book that I have actually been planning to read this season, either September or October, basically since I read Gideon the Ninth last year. I really loved Gideon the Ninth. I thought it was hilarious. This is the lesbian necromancers in space. I always think of it more as like a genre bender of sci-fi, fantasy, and murder mystery, or at least Gideon was. Harrow is a much less likable character, I think, than Gideon, but that's not what has been making me nervous to pick up this book. It is more the fact that it is apparently really crazy in the structure and the way that it's written. It is, I think, 70% written in second-person perspective, which is a little bit awkward or weird, I think. We'll see how it goes. And I think that there is some some stuff going on with time here where it's like alternate possibilities or alternate realities. I just know that the reactions for Harrow the Ninth were really, really mixed. My friend Taylor did really like it, but it did take her a couple reads, I believe. Like the first time she read it, she was like, I don't know what I just read. My local library does have an English physical copy of Harrow the Ninth. It's actually available. I might be picking it up from the library today, so I might be getting to this one sooner than later. Okay, I'm also going to be reading the first sentence from each of the books that I share today to possibly pique your interest as well, so I think Harrow has a good one. Your room had long ago plunged into near complete darkness, leaving no distraction from the great rocking thump, thump, thump of body after body flinging itself onto the great mass already coating the hull. Switching gears completely, this list is in no particular order, is the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. I heard about this book quite a while ago, I think, but then I saw recently that the fourth book in this series had come out. From what I've heard about this series, or the first book in particular, is that it follows a group of men who have a secret romance book club in order to better understand the women in their lives and to, I think, better understand maybe relationships or what women are looking for more in a romantic partner. I think this is really cute. I kind of wish that it had been written by a man, to be honest, but anyway, this is the first book in the series, and there are up to 4 sort of companion novels in this series following each of the different men in the book club. So while I did hear about this quite a while ago, it was people talking about the 4th book that just recently came out that kind of piqued my interest again in this series and maybe request it from the library on hold. So the first sentence in this first book is, "There was a reason Gavin Scott rarely drank." And next up, I think I have 2 Little Red Riding Hood inspired books. There was a lot of Little Red Riding Hood inspired books this fall. I'll start with the first one, is For the Wolf by Hannah F. Whitten. This one, I did have it on my eye. It came out in June, I think, and then a few people that I either know through book club or who I follow Bookstagram accounts read this recently and said that it's a really, really great read for fall. I have seen some mixed reviews also, but I think that I'm going to give this one a shot. I think the main concept for this book is that of this royal family, the first daughter is always for the throne and the second daughter is for the wolf. And the main character is the second daughter to be born in a really long time. And I think she is essentially sacrificed or sent out into the woods for the wolf. And I think that the wolf is actually a man. And I imagine there's a little bit of romance possibly here. But I have heard it's very atmospheric, very fall vibes, very eerie, sort of a little bit dark and whimsical. This book and the next one have both been compared to Catherine Arden's Winter Night Trilogy and Naomi Novik's Uprooted as sort of the comp novels. So I feel like if anything is atmospheric, fall, woodsy, they get compared to Uprooted or Spinning Silver. First sentence in this book is, "For 2 nights before she was sent to the wolf, Red wore a dress the color of blood." The second Little Red Riding Hood inspired book that I have on this list is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. The synopsis for this one is admittedly kind of all over the place. I feel like it has a bunch of information, but from what I can gather, the main character, it lives in sort of a pagan village and she's the only one without magic, which makes her a little bit of an outcast. But when monsters attack the town, she is for some reason the only one that survives, along with a one-eyed captain who is also maybe a prince. I get the sense that the two have to team up to fight or prevail against like a fanatical king, and it sounds like it might be a little bit of a journey story. So I'll just read the blurb here really quickly. It says, in the vein of Naomi Novik's New York Times bestseller Spinning Silver and Catherine Arden's national bestseller The Bear and the Nightingale, this unforgettable debut, inspired by Hungarian history and Jewish mythology, follows a young pagan woman with hidden powers and a one-eyed captain of the Woodsmen as they form an unlikely alliance to thwart a tyrant. So it sounds kind of interesting. It might be very tropey, we'll see. And the first sentence in this book is, the trees have to be tied down by sunset. Next up, I have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. This is a contemporary fiction book written by the same author of Normal People, which I believe I have just right there. I absolutely love Normal People. I am hearing kind of mixed things about Beautiful World, Where Are You? Although, to be fair, Normal People and I think Conversations with Friends, her other book, also have fairly mixed reviews. I think Sally Rooney is generally, or at least her books, tend to be love it or hate it. I do have this on hold. I think at the time that I put it on hold, I was like 400th in line or something. But I am looking forward to getting to it. And I'm really looking forward to talking about this book with other people who have read it, because I feel like Sally Rooney's books are really good conversation pieces. Like, they can trigger a lot of interesting discussions, whether or not you really liked it or really didn't like it. And the first sentence in this book is, a woman sat in a hotel bar watching the door. Then we have the newest release by Adrienne Young, The Last Legacy. This is another young adult fantasy novel. It is set in the same world as the Fable and Namesake duology, but it is not following the same characters. But I think these characters are like tied to one of the characters from the other series. Adrienne Young is sort of an auto-read author for me by now, but I admit to feeling a little bit less excited about The Last Legacy. I'm not really sure why. This book follows the main character, Bryn Roth, and she is sort of like a long-lost family member of the Roth family who we were introduced to in the Fable and Namesake duology, and they are sort of a little bit shady jeweling family, and Bryn is essentially called back to join the Roth family and to participate in more of the business. And I'm feeling like I'm getting a lot of like seedy underworld, making your own way in the world sort of vibes from what this book says in the synopsis. But I do generally enjoy Adrienne Young's works. They're quite environmental and atmospheric with like really good angst. So while my hopes aren't super high for this book, or my excitement going into it isn't really high, maybe then it will sweep me off my feet and I'll absolutely love it. The first sentence in this book is, the docks were no place for a lady. Next up on my list is a little bit more vague, and that is just basically anything by the author Matt Haig. I see this author talked about all over BookTube, or his books all over BookTube, and he's an author that I haven't read any of, but that I would like to. There's a few books of his that I have more so on my radar than others. So for example, The Midnight Library, The Humans, and The Comfort Book, which I think is one of his nonfiction books that was just released. I do know that Matt Haig writes a lot about mental health, and this is something that I have a personal journey and experience as well as a clinical experience with. I know Elizabeth from the channel Reading Riley really likes the book The Humans, so I think this is the one that I have sort of highest on my radar for his, and I think I'm more likely to pick up than the others. And The Humans is a sci-fi speculative work, I believe, where an alien has to, like, takes over the body of this human mathematician. And the book is seeing humans through the eyes of this alien. And I think that sounds really interesting. I did get the first sentence for the book, The Humans, and honestly, it piqued my interest even more. I think I'm going to request this from the library and hopefully get a copy of it soon. So the first sentence in the book, The Humans by Matt Haig is, I know that some of you reading this are convinced humans are a myth, but I am here to state that they do actually exist. Next up, I have the book Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko, and I believe this is the conclusion to the Raybear duology. I read Raybear earlier this year and was kind of blown away. It is a young adult fantasy, but it deals with some pretty intense themes. There was a lot of identity, cultural diversity, feminism, genocide. I don't know, it dealt with a lot in a relatively small, seemingly light young adult fantasy. If you haven't heard about Ray Bear, definitely check it out. The main character, Terry Sai, is kind of like made by her mother for the sole purpose of fulfilling her wish to kill the crown prince of the world that they're in. There is this like magical reason that Terry Sai has to follow the mother's order. And in order to kill the crown prince, she has to first get close to him, and they develop a really great relationship. And so the whole struggle becomes how to not go through with the wish that her mother has asked for. The ending kind of went to an interesting place, so I'm really excited to see where Redemptor goes. The first sentence in this one I think is maybe a little bit spoilery, so I'm actually not going to read that for you today. Next up, I have an indie published book called The Sword in the Street by C.M. Kaplan. This one I heard about from the channel Literature Science Alliance, and this one really caught my eye. She described it as being almost like a contemporary romance but set in a fantasy world, which to me just sounds like fantasy romance, but maybe it's not. But she did say that it focuses a lot more on like the relationships between people and the character development, and is less so of a plot book. And essentially this book takes place in a world where all disputes are settled by a duel, and we follow the main character who is in fact a duelist, and this is very much so a society that is the haves and the have-nots, and our main character is trying to, I guess, he's trying to figure out how to get like more out of life and more from this world, but without crossing moral lines. He also lives with his neurodivergent boyfriend, so that's all that I know about this book. But the thing is, as a primarily library and Scribd reader, indie books are extremely difficult to get a hold of. Neither of the libraries that I have access to have a copy of this book, nor does Scribd. So I'm not really sure if I will be able to read this book, although I really like the way that it sounds. I hope that more people hear about this book. I noticed on Goodreads that it only has 33 or 34 ratings, so definitely check this book out, see if it is of interest to you as well. Okay, and finally the last book that I have on my radar right now is Piranesi by Suzanne Clark. I have been hearing about Piranesi for quite a while now, and it has been on my radar for a long time, but I forgot to include it in my last Radar Reads video. But more people were talking about it or posting about it recently, which jogged my memory to put this book on hold at the library and to include it here in this video. From the sounds of it, everyone is enjoying this book. The setup, from what I've heard and from what it talks about in the synopsis, is essentially that we follow a main character who lives in this house that is sort of kind of seemingly never ending with a weird amount of rooms. There's like an ocean in the house. It's sort of like a labyrinth. And we essentially follow this character's story and his interactions with the one other person that lives in this house. That's all I know about the actual book itself, but everyone says amazing things about this and how like different and very cool and unique and interesting the story is. And I feel like more and more I'm in the mood for things that are a little bit different and unique. Things that are really unique and different just really stick with you so much more because they are so fresh and new and something that you haven't seen before. So that is what I'm expecting out of Piranesi. I really would like to read this book, and I hope that I get to it soon. I do have the first sentence for Piranesi. Let me grab my laptop here. When the moon rose in the third northern hall, I went to the ninth vestibule to witness the joining of three tides. It just sounds like bananas nonsense. I'm really looking forward to this one. Well, those are all the books that I have on my radar right now. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books and think I should get to them sooner than later. Do you have any books on your radar for the fall season? If so, I'd love to hear about them. Well, that is it for me today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye.